you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have this evening with you all. I'm very happy to see so many of you here wanting to either reinforce your commitment to our youth and foster care or wanting to learn a little bit more about what it is that your friends and family do and maybe take the next step towards serving your youth in care as well. I'm very happy to see that this audience is composed of current CASA volunteers, CASA staff, friends, family, and community supporters. And so again, thank you so much for being here today. I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Norma Mendoza. I am the Volunteer Recruitment and DEIB Manager at CASA OC. And again, I'm just so excited to introduce you to some other folks and get the evening started. So I'm going to bring up our Chief Program Officer, Jenny Leon.
Thank you, Norma. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. We're so happy to have you. Before I get started, I'm going to already go off script, Norma. And I'm going to ask for all of our current CASA volunteers if you could give a wave. All right, look at that crew. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And thank you so much for all that you do day in and day out on behalf of the youth that we serve. You all are very special people, so we appreciate you. And then for those of you who are CASA supporters, so friends, family, here to learn more about CASA, would you give a wave so that we can see who you are? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for being here tonight as well. And we hope you've heard some stories a bit about CASA already, and tonight you're going to get a deep dive with two of our greatest. And so I'll introduce those CASAs for you in just a bit, but I wanted to give a little bit of an overview for those of you maybe newer to CASA. And so CASA is a national organization with over 950 chapters across the country. And then here in California, we currently have 44 programs representing the children in the foster care system in California. And so we serve children who are in the Orange County dependency system, and so that's the foster care system. So children who've experienced abuse, neglect, abandonment. And our overall mission as an organization is to provide a powerful voice and a meaningful connection for children who have experienced abuse, neglect, and abandonment. And so currently in Orange County, there are approximately 3,250 youth in the dependency system. And we're on target as an organization to serve 950 of those, maybe more, for our current fiscal year. But you can see there's a gap in the number of kids that we're able to reach with CASA volunteers and how many who are in the foster care system overall. So that's where you all come in, those of you serving on a case, and those of you learning about CASA in more detail tonight. We hope that you go out into the community after this and share a little bit about what you hear tonight and help us raise awareness and bring in more volunteers so we can serve more of those kids. And so tonight you'll get to hear from our 2023 and 2024 Advocates of the Year. You'll learn about the unique challenges and needs that they experience with the youth that they have served. And our hope is that, again, you take the knowledge about what you hear and help to spread the word about the different ways that CASA volunteers help the children in our community. All right, and so it's my pleasure to tell you a little bit more about these wonderful individuals. So we're here for Chat with Pat, and so we've got Pat Cahill, who has been a volunteer with our program for over 28 years. And she served in every possible capacity that a CASA volunteer can serve. So this includes the traditional CASA volunteer that you'll hear more details about, where they serve as a mentor and advocate for youth in the foster care system. We have a family finding program that does just that, helps to find individuals, family members, connections for youth that they may have lost contact with since coming into care, and she's done that work as well. She's also held education rights for many of the children that she has served and made very important decisions in regards to their education. And with all of that, Pat has impacted the lives of over 62 youth in the foster care system, and she's still going strong. And then joining us also is Thomason, and he's been an advocate since 2021. And he served as a traditional CASA, and he's also a member of our Men of CASA affinity group. So nice to see lots of male representation here tonight. And Ian, in the 3-ish short years that he's been a CASA, has already served 4 youth during his time as a CASA volunteer. So they're wonderful people. And before we kick up our video, I also want to take a moment to recognize the individuals that put on this evening. And so you saw Norma, our volunteer recruitment manager, and her team, along with, I can't see them, Ruby and Carrie, whoever Carrie is.
Where did that come from?
I'm gonna ad lib and say, Pat, you made it to the movies. About the impact she has is just an inspiration to us all.
Volunteers like Pat Cahill are effective in their role because they are that special, unique friend to a youth. They're somebody that the youth can always depend on because they always show up. And it's priceless. She is really has devoted her heart and soul to this program.
What Pat has done that really distinguishes her from the rest of them is that she keeps doing it. She's done it for 28 years. She's done it for 62 children. She shows up, and showing up is extraordinary.
My parents had my siblings and I when they were very young. When they were about 17, I was born. And by the time my siblings were born, they were 20 years old. And I think after my mother left, my dad came back into the picture full time. And he was very extremely verbally abusive, physically abusive, pretty much abusive in any kind of way that you could think of. And we entered the foster care system when I was 11. And by the time I was 12 and met Pat, I think I had already been in 6 different places, including foster homes.
My name is Pat Cahill, and I am what is called a court-appointed special advocate. I advocate for children that are in the foster care system, and I also mentor them along the way.
I remember very vividly when Pat first came into my life, they restricted us to staying at the group home. They wouldn't let us go out together. And Pat stuck up for me. She mentioned to the judge, hey, I've been this kid's CASA for going on over maybe 6 months now, and I've yet to take her out. She's never been in my car. I've never taken her out to lunch. I've never taken her to get a smoothie. And seeing how this woman that I had never met before, who didn't really know anything about me, who had no family ties to me, who advocated for me from day one, and it just, thinking about it to this day, it just makes me feel so good.
I have to say, it was scary in the beginning for me because I'm thinking to myself, will this child like me? You know, how are we going to get along? And what you find is all of these kids want is somebody that is going to consistently show up in their life. So that's the thing that is the most important thing, and the thing that they thrive on, because they know that you're going to be there.
She was more than my CASA. She was my friend. She was my biggest supporter, my strongest advocate. And thinking about the bond that we have, thinking about the memories that we created, it just melts my heart.
Oh my God. Oh God. You've gotten so much trouble.
Oh, I hope not.
You did.
You are a beautiful young lady, and I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. So that means the world coming from you. Oh.
I remember the day, I remember when you left, when I took you to court and I drove you back to the group home. You walked through the door, and I didn't see or hear from you for a while, and then one day out of the clear blue, you called up, and the both of us started crying because you said to me, you're the only mother I've ever had. And oh God, I remember sitting on a the other end of the phone crying my eyes out, and the two of us were bawling. I couldn't say anything for a little while because I was just so grateful to have you back. The foster youth, they have everybody come in and out of their lives. It's like a swinging door. But the main thing, you coming through that door every darn time. And they know that they have you and you're there for them. That's what CASA is all about. Someone being there, someone who's committed to making a difference in a youth's life.
So with that, I think we're ready to welcome Pat and Ian to the stage.
Okay,
Let's do it.
let's do it. It's not easy with an artificial hip.
Well, you did great. There you go.
Excuse me.
All right, we got the Kleenex? You go with the napkins?
Yep.
All right, well, thank you for being here, Pat. Really appreciate you being able to share your experiences with everyone here, myself. Just really incredible what you've done for everyone. And I just want to first of all say thank you on behalf of everyone that you've touched, all the youths, all the people in the system and the court. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So we've got some questions in here. We've got audience questions. I appreciate everyone being here. So first, I want to start, why did you become a CASA?
Well, let me start from the beginning. I was working in the corporate environment, and I needed to have a place to go. I called up an agency, and it was called ARC Abuse Services for Foster Youth. And I started volunteering for them. And one night, there was a woman that brought her foster son in for us to provide respite care that night because she had to go to social services to take foster parent training that they're required to do, almost like continuing education. They have to participate in that. And she handed me her foster son, and he was in a car seat. And she said his name is Christopher. And I got to meet Christopher, and I spent time with Christopher that night. When his foster mom came back to pick him up after the meeting, I asked her, I said, how old is Christopher? Now you have to understand, this was a baby car seat. She said, Pat, Chris is 3.5 years old. And that young man not only changed my life, he changed all of the volunteers in that organization. So let me get to what happened. I was at ARC, I was at the front desk, and one of the, as a matter of fact, a staff lady from CASA came in with a young little boy, and he was supposed to have monitored visits with his parents. That was the beauty of ARC. It provided respite care for the foster parents. It provided a place for foster youth to come to have the monitored visits with their parents, and it was we had how do you want to call it, psych ed majors that would come in and do the monitored visit with the parents to see and observe, and then write a report, and then they would make sure they gave it to us, and then we made sure it got to the social worker right away. Well, I'll call her Stephanie, for the life of me, I can't remember her name, but Stephanie came in, and when this young little boy went to have the visit with his mom, I started asking her, I said, what organization do you work with? Because she wasn't a foster parent. And she said, I work for CASA. And I said, really? And I said, what does CASA do? So she explained to me, and CASA had just started in 1985. Here it was probably the beginning or middle of I'm sorry, did I say 94? No, 85 for CASA. And this was, I think, like the middle of 95. And the organization that I worked for folded because in 1995, Orange County had a financial crisis. And so when we folded, I went, CASA. So I went to an orientation, and I'm still there. And I still don't have a paycheck.
That's pretty wild. So 1985. So it was still pretty new then.
CASA
in
was.
1995. Yeah, absolutely. So there's the traditional CASA role, and then like Jenny had mentioned, you've done several others, including family finding, educational rights holder. Can you talk a little bit about those different roles that you were in?
Yes. I can remember being in court for one of my teens. He was in let me think about it for a second. He was in teen court. He had a little bit of a problem with the law. But anyway, he had me as his CASA. And one day the judge says, I'm not going to go into his circumstances, but the judge says, well, we need someone to take his educational rights over that. And all of a sudden I hear, Pat! And sure enough, I became his ed rights holder. So that meant I used to have to go to the school for IEPs. I gave my telephone number and my name to all of his teachers. So I said, if there's any problem whatsoever, please let me know and I will do whatever I can do. And it was interesting because there was a time when Brandon we were going from one school to another, and I went into the meeting thinking, okay, I'm just going to provide. I had 3 bags full of binders for all of his education, and I can remember going in, and all of a sudden the room was filled with everybody, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's something wrong. What they did is they surprised me with an IEP. And I sat down for the IEP, and I'm thinking to myself,
what's an IEP for those who might not know?
Individualized educational program plan. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. And you don't know the lingo. I apologize for that. But anyway, I got a surprise for this meeting. I came in, I sat down, and the school director said, well, we think it would be better for Brandon to be in an alternate school. And I went, no. And then he said, well, what do you, I said, no. In this meeting, I'm the parent. So no. So CASAs can have a great, because I remember asking Brandon, I said, Brandon, do you understand everything that's being said here? He said, yes, Pat, I do. And I said to the principal, I said, he doesn't need an alternative school. His last school, where they had 3,500 students. And I said, how many students do you have here? And he thrives on that. And I asked Brandon, I said, Brandon, what do you want to do? And he says, Pat, he says, I want to stay here. And I said, that's it. I'm the parent in this case, so please understand that. And he went into that school. So being a CASA, the traditional CASA, you get involved in a lot of different aspects. For Brandon, I went through a traditional, and then I went into teen court. And then I had another young man by the name of Jose. And Jose, I didn't hold the educational rights for him. But I went to all of his IEP meetings and got to participate and listen to what they had to say. But those are the things, and even as a traditional CASA, I didn't hold the educational rights for Jose. But then when he turned 18 and his educational right holder said, I'm done, I picked up the slack because he stayed in this system until he was 21. So that's the thing. all of these kids, and then the other thing that I need to tell you too, as a traditional CASA, Kanae, she left the system, and I didn't see, when she was 18, I left. I went to all of her IEP meetings too as well. But the fact of the matter is that she left without completing high school. She was intermittent going to school. On June 13 this year, I attended her graduation, high school graduation from Huntington Beach High School. And next month, she's going to be 35. So was she a handful? Yes, she was a handful. But she was also great fun. These kids, I've grown up with them. I'm not old at all. It's been a wonderful thing because you get more out of it than you give. When you have a young lady call you up and starts crying on the phone saying, Pat, you're the only mother I've ever had. And another youth that will say to you, I don't trust anybody, but I trust you. Those are the things, and it takes you a while to build up that trust. So if you are considering it, please. And I love the fact that all these guys are in this audience. You guys are needed, and needed desperately. I'm sorry, Ian.
No, you're good. I like the tangent there.
I can go off,
I'll ring you back in if we need to, okay?
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about what Family Findings does?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I got introduced to Family Findings. Do you anybody out here love mysteries? Really, mysteries? And do you like playing detective? I have the best job for you. The best job. Family Finding, it's absolutely awesome. We do what is called a search and report. That we get the referral from the social worker because, hey, this child needs family members. A lot of these kids don't have family members that are participating in their life. So what I would do, my cohort in crime, Tara, would call me up and say to me, Pat, I have a case for you. And I said, okay, send it over. Give me what you think I need, and I'll go from there. So I play detective. I don't do family Facebook real well, but I do Ancestry, and I go into different websites, and I find the individuals. And I make a list of them, take all the information I can find, figure out how they're related to the child. And then I hand it over to Tara and say, okay, you're it for now until you hear from the social worker. And then when the social worker says, okay, sick Pat on the relatives. And so I start the phone calls. And I call people, and and I'll never forget, oh God, this was so hard. I wound up reaching this young lady's dad. And he had been divorced from his wife and child. And he learns that his child is in foster care. And he said to me, he says, Pat, he says, you hit me with a 2x4. And I said, I said, I don't mean to make you upset or anything like that. And he said, I'll have to call you back. I'll call you back on Tuesday. And this was like Friday. And Tuesday came and went, and I didn't hear from him. So Wednesday, I called him again. And he said, I'm very sorry. He said, I got so busy and stuff like that. He actually wound up coming into his daughter's life and going in for therapy visits with his daughter. So those are the things. all of these kids, even Kanae, I wanted so much to bring family into her life. I wanted to do it way back when. But now they're finding, and I'll never forget, I worked with social services one day. We as CASAs went in and they wanted to have this start. And one lady, we talked to her and her response was, I've waited 17 years for this phone call. She said, I called social services, never got a response back, and then I couldn't find the social worker anymore after that. But there is a big push now trying to bring family members in because these kids need connections. The best connection they have right now is you CASAs, you potential CASAs. That's what these children need. And and Ian told me, he said his CASA was a chatterbox and the other one is not. That happens. When they feel safe, they need to feel safe. They're going to test you. They want to see if you're made out of Velcro or are you silly putty. That's just going to fall off and not be there. That's the thing. That's what they're looking for. So Family Connections is helping making that happen. We're bringing family members in. There are a lot of success stories that Family Findings has, that kids have gone and lived with the relatives. We just try to help the family make the connections, either through cards, phone calls, whatever. And Family Findings is really good about that. So if you like detective work, God, have I got a job for you. And so does Tara. So does Tara.
Yeah, and I think from recently learning at that conference I was at with you, is a lot more success, even just having family visitation with youth for graduating high school and all the things.
Oh yeah, that was, I had Tyler in my car. I mean, Tyler, I'm only 5'2". Tyler was 6'1" or 6'2", I can't remember which. So it looked kind of funny when we would walk down the street. But anyway, I took him out for his, I think it was his 17th birthday, 15th or 17th birthday, and all of a sudden he had family that was involved in his life. He had a sister and a brother-in-law. A sister and brother-in-law got involved in his life, but they couldn't afford to live in California anymore, so they took off and moved to Texas. And when all the family went to Texas, who was Tyler left with? Me. And I took him out for his birthday dinner, and he sat in my car, and he bawled his eyes out. And Tyler is not the kid that cries. Not a kid that cries at all. And I said, Tyler, do you want to talk about it? And he said, Pat, all I want is my mother back in my life. Whenever I used to bring his mother up with him, nope, not going there. But this was one time he wanted his mother to be in his life. So I said, Tyler, okay, let me see what I can do. And I went in, and he had a very good judge. And the next time I went into court, I asked the judge, I said, I need to get Tyler's mom involved in his life. And he said, Tyler wants to have her in his life? And I said, yes, Your Honor, he does. And so he said, do whatever you need to do. And so I wound up calling his brother-in-law, and I said, Tyler wants his mom to be at his graduation. And Dakari said to me, Pat, talk to her. She's right here. So I talked to his mom, and she drove all the way up from Texas and was there in the audience for him for his graduation. So that to me was a real win-win. Tyler, who is, I believe, probably about 24, is now a dad. And so he and his mom didn't hit it off too well once he moved to Texas. But since the birth of his son, his mom is very involved in his life now. So he's very happy about that. But then there was one other young man that I had, and his name, I believe I told you, is Jose. So Jose was the kind of kid, and he was very, very interesting, a young man. We would go on outings, and Jose was a youth that had to have everything exactly the way he liked it, which was fine with me. I had no problems. But it was always McDonald's. So we would drive to McDonald's, and then after a couple times I noticed there's something radically wrong. And we were driving to McDonald's, and we would go this, and I used to take him out every week. And every week we would go to McDonald's, and every week he would say to me, "You're going the wrong way." And I'm thinking, okay. And at first we got into an argument, but then I went dingbat, and I just said, "I'll make you this deal, Jose. Let me go just a couple of blocks more, and if I'm wrong, I'll do a U-ey, and we'll find it." And then all of a sudden he would go, "Oh, you are going the right way." For what I found out about Jose was that he had some developmentally delayed problems, and eventually had a conference with his therapist and the group home staff, and we found out that he needed additional help, and he wound up being qualified for regional center because of that. So you, as a CASA, you take the youth out, you take them, to different places, go and enjoy yourselves. That's what they want. They want the fact that they're away from a group home. They want to be able to go to a park and sit on a bench and not hear screaming going on around them. They just want you in their life. And the fact of the matter is, whenever I with my youths, I called up, made the appointment with them, then spoke to the staff. So that they knew. And if I was going to be late, I called and said, "I'm coming, just a little bit delayed." And that's all they needed. They needed to know that you cared enough for them. And it was interesting too, because Brandon, he was in my car and we were driving. He said, "Pat," he says, "I know what I want to do when I graduate high school." And I said, "What's that, Brandon?" He says, "I want to become a CASA." And I said, "That's awesome, Brandon." And he goes, "How much do I get paid?" I said, "Brandon, I'm still trying to find that out." So these are the things that, I'm sorry, I could talk about CASA all night long.
No, that's great. You've got a ton of stories with, what was it, 62 different youths? So I'm sure you could go on and on, but I do want to ask some questions kind of about the foster care system itself. Maybe demystifying it a little bit. I know I'm still learning more about it every day, the good and the bad. What are some of the ways that kids come into care? I think that also might be a little foggy. What are some big ways that we see that happen?
Usually they come in because it might be mom and dad are drug addicts. And if they are into drugs, what happens is that the children are neglected. They are one young man, it's physical abuse, it's verbal abuse, it's sexual abuse. There's all of that. But primarily it is neglect that brings them in, and because mom and dad can't parent, unfortunately.
Yeah, and just to hit on a couple other things too that I'd never thought of, deceased parents as well, immigration issues are other ways. But so kind of starting off right with that, with kind of a traumatic experience as a young child, it leads to maybe some difficulties that people see in school a lot. I know that one of the stats is that 52% of youth in dependency are going to graduate from high school. So 48% are not going to graduate when they're in the system. So, having someone like yourself, I know, increases that quite a bit, those odds of graduation.
That goes up to 92% for if they have a CASA involved in their lives.
So huge gap there that gets filled by having someone just regular in their life like you.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that was really interesting is by the age of 24, more than 50% of youth formerly in dependency will be unemployed.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
So, and that ties into not graduating high school as well. So
Mm-hmm.
just by upping that stat is a lot. And then the last one is 1 in 5 youth formerly in care will become homeless within 1 year of emancipation. And that can be between 18 and 21, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and so having someone like you there to help guide and figure out what are the right resources, what different organizations can we use versus just graduating high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do I do, right?
Yeah.
I know at 18, I didn't know what I was doing, let alone, and I had family and friends. Can't imagine being in the system and graduating out. So what would be some other ways that you would say that people could help youth in foster care? I know volunteering as CASA was one.
Right. Volunteering for CASA. I mean, CASA has a lot of different areas that you can help out in. And even if you wanted to become friends of CASA, where you can help out with the different events and everything else that they have going on, that's something that you can do too as well.
Absolutely. I would say also too, one of the couple notes that we took internally is just also spreading word of mouth, even about CASA.
Yeah, CASA can be the best kept secret in Orange County because you don't have an advertising budget. But that's where you can talk to your friends and stuff about the organization and spread the word because it's really, really needed. There are over 300 kids on the wait list right now waiting for a CASA. So anything that you can do to help would be greatly appreciated. And there's even the Orangewood Foundation. Maybe you might want to make donations to the Orangewood Foundations because that's where a lot of the foster youth go to. And they go in for independent living. If you are a businessman and you can go in and talk to them, talk to Orangewood Foundation and offer to do some sort of training for the youth. They need that. They really, one of the things, excuse me, pardon me, but my pet peeve is that there really needs to be something here, an organization, maybe somebody in the audience might start that, and that is kids need to learn a trade. If they learn a trade, they can pay, work and then put the money aside and then go to college when they're ready, because a number of the CASA youth are not ready to go to college. But they can do that later on. Once they bank that money, if you are skilled in a different trade, this is where you can help these, and especially the boys. We have a higher percentage of boys. And most of mine have been boys that I've been a CASA to. So I teach them how to treat a lady,
I love that idea with the trades. I work with trades all the time and very passionate about that as an option for children as they age. Would love to kind of hear about, if people are hesitant about becoming a CASA. I know one of the big things that always comes up. Would love to hear your experience with court because that is very intimidating. I heard that and I immediately think of, suits, law and order, a judge banging a gavel. Who the heck am I to say anything to a judge for this, child, youth? What's that like?
In the very beginning, it is a little bit intimidating when you go in there, but the beauty of it is that your case supervisor is always there with you. You're not left alone. There was a judge, he's retired now. Actually, there were 2 of them that have retired, and I can remember. Judge Cahill, he was a doll, absolute doll. And I had, you don't know this story, but I had a young man who was, I was asked, my CASA case supervisor called me and they said, Pat, we have a case for you. And I went, okay. And I said, tell me about it. And they said, it's a young boy. He's 12 years old. He really has nobody in his life. And he is autistic. And would you be able to, do you think you could take that? And I went, I can have a conversation and not have to worry about, getting any negative feedback? Well, so anyway, I took on Devin, and I became his CASA. And the judge asked me one day, he said, Pat, he said, can you bring Devin in? The next time there is a court hearing, can you bring him in? And I brought Devin in because the staff brought him because he was living in a regional center home. And he was a great kid, but if he wanted to go someplace, he went someplace. You had to take him by the hand and kind of turn him around and to get him to go the other way. But the judge wanted to meet him, and I brought him in, and the judge came down off the bench, and he sat down and tried to carry on a conversation with Devin, and it came home to him as to what Devin was dealing with, me. But I just felt privileged to be there with the judge, because he was saying, he said, Pat, he said, thank you very, very much for what you do. But, and then I've had Judge Bischoff, who was a very 8:30 in the morning. Everybody was in the court. Social workers were there. The attorneys had to be there at 8:30 in the morning. I walked in, hi Pat, how are you? But I really, really enjoyed him. And I can remember one day I was in his courtroom with Cahill, or Cahill was going to be coming in. And I said, Your Honor, she's got to go to therapy. Can you please order that? And he goes, no. And I went, why? And he goes, she doesn't need to go if she's not up to going. Understand that. If she's not ready to do counseling, she's not going to do it. And which is true, because that's another thing about these foster youths. They do multiple placements. They also go through multiple therapists. Sometimes they go through multiple social workers. But the one person in their life is you. You're always there. You know what's going on in their life. So that's why the judges, that's the one thing. It can be intimidating when you first come in, but I will tell you one thing. The first report the judge reads is yours. He reads your report because he's getting a real, true picture of the youth. And in the beginning, I used to read everything about the kids. I stopped. I'm going to go and get to know the child. And then I'll read the stuff. And what that meant is I saw somebody that was totally different from what was in what I read in the files.
Yeah, because you're the one who actually gets to see them on the day-to-day.
Yep.
And you might have multiple social workers that are advocating on their behalf but don't actually know this youth. So
true.
It's valuable.
Because the social worker only has to see them once a month. If that happens. And if there's any social workers in this audience, I apologize.
All right, so now I want to, we got about maybe a couple more minutes, and I want to run through some audience questions that were submitted online.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll try to hit as many as we can. We got quite a few of them. This one I'm actually selfishly interested in as well, but how do you motivate your youth to be invested in their education?
Well, like Kane, when I was her CASA, I would say, you're going to be a fabulous attorney. You're awesome,
Mm-hmm.
But don't focus on the negative. Focus on the positive of what's going on in the youth's education. Promote that. Maybe, if they enjoy reading, select a book that the both of you can read and ask questions and talk back and forth. That's what, they really want to do. Some of them, like Jose, read a book? No, he never did that. I even took him to the library, and the only thing he would do would be to look at the comics. And I mean, look at the comics. He didn't read what was in the comics because he couldn't read.
Yeah.
And it wasn't his fault.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And with youth turning 18, have you had experience in trying to convince them to stay using the different resources that are available to them?
Oh yeah, they usually do.
Do they? Okay.
I've had Brandon stayed in till he was 21. He moved to Pennsylvania, and he utilized the services through Orange County, those that he could. But he also had social services there in Pennsylvania to help him out. Tyler stayed in until he was 21. Kanae was, when she turned 18, that was it. But they've extended it now to 21. These kids need it. They absolutely need it. And that the other thing is they can also put in for transitional housing, which is really, really good. The only thing they have to be doing is they have to be either going to school or they have to be working, one or the other. And then they give so much of the money that they make, and they put it in an account for them so that when they get ready to leave, they've got the first and the last month's rent. So that's the beauty of them staying in extended foster care. And for some of them, it works out really well because they're with their fellow foster youth. And that's where they have to share a room, possibly. But, you can't beat it. The only thing is, what they find hard to do is they have to go to a house meeting once. It's either once a week or once a month. I can't remember which. But it's there, it's available for them, and some places there are apartments out there in Santa Ana, wherever, that they've managed to do that. They've also done it out in Riverside, because I had a foster youth that was in housing out there as well.
Yeah, they've got some transitional housing in Tustin as well.
Mm-hmm.
My youth was involved in. How do you gently probe and find out information from your youth without feeling like you're giving too much pressure on them?
No, I just casually kind of ask questions. We'll be sitting there eating and bring up a subject and see how they go. If it's, no, I don't want to go there, honor that. But I usually get answers out of them. And I'm not sneaky, but I try and get as much information as I can. Because the whole thing is, when you gain the trust, they open up. When you gain the trust and they know that you're Velcro, they are there with you. You saw that Kanae and I didn't see one another for 14 years. It was because once Kanae left the system, she was mad at everybody. And I remember saying to my case supervisor, I said, I think she's mad at me too. But as it turns out, it took her several years later, and she happened to find my phone number, and she called me. And it was at Christmas time. And the two of us were sitting on the phone and crying our eyes out. But that's the thing. I still have that connection with her. And I had a case where there were 3 sisters, and I had one of the sisters, and she had, in high school, she had AP classes and was putting herself. She was working. She was working for a telephone like Verizon or T-Mobile or something like that. And she went into college, and she was working, and she was paying for college along the way herself. So these are the things, you plant the seeds. That's what you have to realize. You plant the seeds with these kids. Show them that you have an interest. Or, okay, you know how to do algebra? Can you show me? And you really know how to do algebra. And I don't.
Or you don't. Well, that kind of leads into another question that we had, but I know you stay in touch with different CASAs. How many of your youth do you stay in touch with over the years?
They all, the one thing that the kids have, I've always had the same phone number. It's always there, and they have it. If they choose to keep in touch with me, that happens. That's how I learned about Tyler and his brand new son. I keep in touch with Brandon. Brandon is now going into, I guess, his senior year at college. He's going to have a degree in computer science focusing on cybersecurity. So he's done that. And he was one young man I was very, very concerned about, but he has totally turned his life around. He's always been a neat kid. That's the thing. They were all neat kids. They just had the worst possible thing happen to them in their lives.
Absolutely. That's pretty special that you get to stay in touch with all of them. What advice would you have for new CASA volunteers that have recently been sworn in?
Breathe. And I can tell you, it doesn't make a difference. I mean, even if I have to go and interview a youth to do family findings, am I nervous? Yeah. Why should I be nervous? Because I'm only asking questions. It's just a nature of the job, You'll be nervous, but all they want is you. All they want is you in their lives. So that's, don't be, if you're scared, it's normal. It's like going to the doctor, you're the dentist, you never know what's going to happen. So that makes you nervous. So sometimes, like seeing your brand new kid for the first time, you're a little bit nervous and stuff like that. But then all you have to do is strike up a conversation. Hey, I love your purple hair. So that's the thing. You break the ice and you have a marvelous, marvelous relationship.
And on the subject of building relationships, how do you build the rapport with the youth's family of origin or the caregivers, whoever it may be that they have as their guardians?
That hasn't been a difficult thing for me. I don't know why, but it's worked out really well. I mean, I've had conversations with Tyler's mom. She would call me up and stuff like that. And I remember the very first child I had. Oh God bless Amanda. I don't know where she is now, but her mother was really, really odd. But I got along with her. I just had to hold the phone away, because she was yelling at me. But you deal with it. I'm so sorry that you feel that way, But that's the thing, and what I do is, if I would go into a family that I don't know anything about, I would ask, what are your cultures? What, you drink tea, but you put the sugar in your mouth before you drink the tea. All of those things. Just people love to talk. That's my problem.
I would say, lastly, would love to know what is keeping you coming back for the past 28 years.
Pat, I have a case I think needs your help.
It's not just them keeping you back. What's keeping you here?
Every one of these kids, I've been blessed. I've been blessed to have these kids in my life. They've taught me so much, taught me so much. And that is, don't judge a book by its cover. You got to go in and get into that book. You've got to find out about that child, because all they want is you in their life. And I can remember going out with Jose one time. He was very afraid to go to new places. And I can remember he was going into a brand new group home, and he said, Pat, you've got to go with me. I said, I'm happy to go with you. And that's how he was. And he wanted to go watch his girlfriend do cheer. I had to drive around the block 3 times before he could go in and watch her. I said, she's not going to bite. And I said, you might find you like her. And so he eventually went in. So that, the kids keep you coming back. And, I have to thank one man in the audience, my husband. Mm-hmm. We're going to be, in December, we will be celebrating our 56th wedding anniversary.
Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations.
And I probably shouldn't say this, but sometimes when I could come home from doing meetings and stuff, or with my CASA youth, he said, "What is it, a cup of tea or a beer?" And I have to thank my children too, because they always rearranged their schedules when Mom was going out with the CASA youth. So for that, I was forever thankful for. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Pat.